oversight, through legislation, evidence collection, and through prosecution for the openly criminal acts that we're seeing in our communities every day. Democracy doesn't exist without accountability, but you got to have a spine. I thank you, Mr. Smith, for doing your part. Our fight continues for accountability, not for impunity. Thank you, and I yield back.
Oh. May I have a
Mr. Chairman, I would yield to the gentleman from New York.
Mr. Smith, I just want to take a minute and allow you to explain why you requested the toll records of those officials for January 6th.
For the January 6th investigation, you mean,
yeah.
Correct? With regard to the toll records that were subpoenaed regarding the period of the 4th, I think it was to the 7th, we had evidence that the president had directed Rudy Giuliani, one of his co-conspirators, to contact members of Congress to try to further delay the proceedings and exploit the violence that happened in the Capitol. We had evidence that those calls had happened. We wanted to get more evidence of that to corroborate it for trial. That is, again, as I've mentioned earlier today, a standard part of an investigation to understand who a conspiracy is trying to reach out to, how they're trying to influence people.
And you want a documentary confirmation?
Yes, correct.
Time of the gentleman is expired. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Nels, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, I'll just cut right to the chase here. Your investigation and attempted prosecution of President Trump, it wasn't about justice. It was about politics. Politics. From day one, under the Biden-Harris DOJ, you weaponized the law to go after their top political opponent. You pushed flawed legal theories, and even the far left Washington Post called you out. They called you out, sir, for violating the First Amendment. You tried to criminalize political speech, slap unlawful gag orders on a presidential candidate, and spy on Republican members of Congress in violation of the speech or debate clause, including the sitting Speaker of the House. Mr. Smith, you mishandled documents, pressured defense lawyers, and dumped a massive trove of so-called evidence right before the election, and you did it to sway voters. That's why you did it. And don't get me started on that raid at Mar-a-Lago or your unconstitutional appointment, which a federal judge in Florida rightly tossed out. A very bad day for you. This wasn't, Mr. Smith, about upholding the law. It was about tearing down President Trump and anyone close to him. You even tried to ram through a politically motivated final report after your cases collapsed, including the Presidential Transition Act and basic fairness. But here's the good part, America, here's the good part. The American people saw right through it. They rejected, sir, your witch hunt loud and clear in November, handing President Trump a commanding victory. The voters spoke loud and clear. They wanted an end to the weaponization of our justice system. In your opening statement, you spoke about proof of beyond a reasonable doubt. Mr. Smith, I will give you proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Donald Trump winning the popular vote by over 2 million votes. The Electoral College by 85 votes, along with every single swing state. Now, sir, that is proof beyond a reasonable doubt that the crap you were shoveling did not pass the smell test with the American people. To put it bluntly, Mr. Smith, the stink remains on you. And lastly, I would like to quickly address the police officers of January 6th. Mr. Dunn, Mr. Fanone, Mr. Gonell, Mr. Hodges. I'm a member of the new select committee to actually examine what happened that day. And I can tell you, gentlemen, that the fault does not lie with Donald Trump. It lies with Yogananda Pittman and the U.S. Capitol leadership team. We know they had the intelligence and there was going to be a high propensity for violence that day. Claim my time, yeah.
It will be in order. The time belongs to the gentleman from Texas. We've had some disruptions already. We don't need that. Let the gentleman may continue.
We know the Capitol leadership team, specifically Yogananda Pittman, had the intelligence, and there was going to be a high propensity for violence that day. And the Capitol itself was the target. We knew the extremist groups were going to be there. And why do I say that? It was your own report from your intelligence section, the IICD, which was run by Pittman, in the January 3rd special events section. It was in it. It was in it. And Mr. Dunn, I believe that you thought that day would be like just any other. In your testimony to the January 6th committee, you said you found out how ugly was going to get on a cell phone. Somebody sent you some information on social media. The point is, you were all unprepared to deal with that day. And that's because your leadership failed to share the intelligence with you. It was their fault, folks. It was their fault. It was not President Trump. And we are going to expose it for the first time because the Benny Thompson, the sham committee didn't do it.
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
The sham committee didn't do it. The report is 845 pages. Donald Trump's name is mentioned 4,207 times. We know what the committee wanted to do is to not allow Donald Trump to come back and win again. And they failed miserably. And I hope you now can see that. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield the balance to my distinguished colleague out of Jersey.
I just want to quickly go over something because we keep rewriting history. The president said peacefully and patriotically. What don't we understand about peacefully and patriotically? He asked for the National Guard. That was ignored. He asked Speaker Pelosi. What don't we understand that?
Will the gentleman yield for a question? Are you saying
No,
Nancy Pelosi controls the National Guard?
Wait a minute.
The president could have ordered the National Guard if he wanted to, and you know that.
My time, I lost some of my time.
Time belongs to the gentleman from New Jersey. You have a few more seconds.
And finally, how many elected officials say we're going to fight to win an election? It's terminology used all the time, seriously. And of course, if they were guilty, they should be prosecuted. The problem was there were many in the mix.
The unanimous consent. Gentleman yields back. The
And
gentleman
last thing,
from Texas yields back.
your hand gestures, Mr. Fanone.
No.
You need
The time of the gentleman
medication.
expired. The time of the gentleman expired. The audience will be in order. The committee will be in order. And the gentlelady from Georgia is recognized for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two unanimous consent requests to enter into the record, two articles.
Gentlelady can proceed.
An article dated December 29, 2025, titled Wall Street Journal Editorial Board Calls Out MAGA's Latest 2020 Stolen Election Nonsense.
Objection.
And the second article, an article dated December 23, 2025, titled Fact Check. Fulton County's 315,000 unsigned early votes are not proof of electoral fraud.
Without objection, the gentleman from Illinois is recognized for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Chairman. Under unanimous consent, I ask to enter into the record the Judiciary Democrats' January 2026 report titled, Where Are They Now? The Perpetrators of January 6th and the Defenders of Democracy Who Stopped Them, which profiles the illustrious career trajectories of some of the key actors from January 6th who were pardoned by Donald Trump. And secondly,
Objection.
a second report, January 2026 report from Judiciary Democrats, 1 year later, assessing the public safety implications of President Trump's mass pardon of 1,600 January 6 rioters and insurrectionists.
Without objection, the gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Smith, for joining us. You know, most people are wondering why you are even here today. But it's because we've heard conspiracy after conspiracy that the 2020 election was rigged. And Capitol Police officers were harmed and died because of those conspiracies. And we have important elections coming up. And the people want them to happen, and they want them to be fair. And the one person who should be telling the truth about elections is the president. But Donald Trump has not and is still not telling the truth about the 2020 elections. In fact, there is a January 6th page on the taxpayer-funded White House website that says the election was stolen from Trump, a blatant, disproven lie he knows is totally false. So one of my Republican colleagues earlier brought up Trump's mind state, that he knew he lost, and he knew that what he was saying was untrue, but that you had no proof. So, Mr. Smith, what evidence did you develop to suggest Trump knew he had lost the 2020 election?
We had evidence from a variety of sources, evidence from people who were close to Donald Trump and who he relied on, people who wanted him to win the election, people who were employed by his campaign to help him win the election. Our evidence is that this was a conspiracy and that Donald Trump specifically sought to prey on party loyalty. Our investigation involved interviewing and subpoenaing records of Republicans because that's who Donald Trump sought to prey on to stay in office. And the reality is certain people refused to do that. The vice president refused to go along with that. People in various states' legislatures refused to go along with that. And the reality is that if we took this case to trial, a good number of our witnesses would be Republicans. If a Democrat had committed these crimes, had done these things, I would have subpoenaed a number of Democrats. I would have subpoenaed their records.
And I'm going to ask you about that. But correct, it's not like he was calling Nancy Pelosi. So why is it legally important to know that Trump knew he was lying when he said the election was stolen?
That was part of our proof at trial, and it was relevant to the charges, specifically to the first charge to defraud the United States. It is permissible for someone to lie, but when they use speech to commit a crime, to facilitate a crime, that is not protected by the First Amendment. The Supreme Court has been very clear on that, and this very issue was litigated in the case. The defense raised this very issue. And one thing I want to be clear about today, the case that I investigated and the case we had, it was built to be tried in a courtroom, not in the media. Our case was built to withstand the crucible of litigation, and our assessment was that we had proof beyond a reasonable doubt that would do that.
So what I heard you say is that when you lie, and you know you're lying, and then you act on that lie to overturn the democratic process, that is a felony. A January 6er actually said, if I can't trust him, then who can I trust? Exactly. You know, we cannot even trust our own president. And in fact, there's so many other things that you can say that you're not allowed to say because a Trump-appointed judge sealed the documents, refusing to release the files yet again, which is why we could probably ask you far more questions if those were unsealed. So I know I don't have that much time. I want to now shift to these allegations from my Republican colleagues about the collection of phone records of Republican senators. I guess some of the ones that were trying to get $500,000 of taxpayer dollars. So many of the phone records of members were requested before you were appointed as special counsel, yes or no? That's true? Is that accurate?
Yes,
Yeah.
some subpoenas occurred before I was special counsel.
And what do you say to those who claim you chose to target Republicans because you only collected phone records for Republicans?
The conspiracy I was investigating targeted Republicans.
Right.
As I mentioned earlier.
That's right. And so you would have requested any relevant call records necessary for your investigation of a Republican or of a Democrat?
That's correct. And to be clear, if a Democrat committed these acts, we would have sought those. I could just add one thing. We interviewed Rudy Giuliani in the course of this investigation, and we asked him, why did you, in one of the voicemails he left for the senator, mention the fact that it was Republicans that you were reaching out to? And he said, because the Democrats weren't going to help us, and even some Republicans wouldn't help us. And so our evidence showed repeatedly that the plan was to see if you could prey on people's party loyalty.
Some of the gentlelady's expired. The gentlelady from...
Thank you, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Smith, it was during your deposition with our committee that you revealed that you tasked your team, specifically J.P. Cooney, to engage with the partisan January 6th committee. You had to have known at the time the controversy surrounding this committee, including the fact that all of the members had been appointed by Nancy Pelosi, who disallowed the Republicans from being able to engage. Yet you proceeded anyway, raising numerous questions as to your strategy for conspiring with the J6 committee. You had every possible resource available to you. Your prosecution of President Trump was clearly a priority for the Biden administration, and it is clear that you had an unlimited budget. And you also left no stone unturned, even subpoenaing records from sitting members of the House and Senate. So what information could the J6 committee possess that you and the nation's top law enforcement agency could not obtain on your own?
I did request J.P. Cooney.
What did they have that you couldn't obtain on your own?
In any investigation, you would,
What information did they have that you were not able to obtain on your own?
I couldn't know that until I had their information.
Was there anything there? Did you find that they had information that you were not able to obtain?
I don't recall specifically every bit of information. What I can tell you is we took in their information because we wanted to collect any information that could be relevant. We made our own independent assessment of the evidence.
Okay, so from the time that you were appointed as special counsel up to the date of your resignation in January of 2025, did you personally have any contact with any members, staff, or contractors of the House's January 6th Select Committee, and if so, who?
I do not believe I had contact with anybody personally from the January
Okay.
Select
The
Committee.
January 6th committee failed to archive or preserve its video recordings of witness interviews, deleting or destroying as many as 900 interview summaries or transcripts involving more than 1 full terabyte of digital data. I repeat, the J6th committee destroyed evidence. Let that sink in. Why would they do such a thing? I think we have a dang good idea. The committee actually used selective clips from these videos and transcripts during their hearings, and yet by destroying this evidence, they have denied Congress and the public the ability to obtain their full content and context. They created their narrative by selective use of the evidence before them, so how very convenient. Did you or your team receive any of those witness transcripts or video recordings of transcribed interviews from the Select Committee that were not released to the public?
What I can tell you is that I requested J.P. Cooney to contact the Select Committee.
Do you know if you received any of the evidence or testimony that the J6 committee eventually destroyed?
I don't have any information that the J6 Committee
You don't know
destroyed
one way
any
or the other as you sit here today.
No, what I'm telling you is that I requested all the information we could get from the January 6th.
Has all of the information that you requested been preserved? All of the information from the J6 committee, has that been preserved?
The information that we requested and received, we reviewed it. It was
Has it
part of
been
our file.
preserved?
Yes, as part
Thank
of
you.
our files. And
Were you or your team advised, or did you get the impression from anyone affiliated with the January 6th committee that these documents were not for public release, even though portions of them had already been shown to the American people? Were you advised to keep any of the information from the J6 committee confidential?
as I sit here right now, I don't recall that.
Okay.
I recall.
Did the J6 committee provide you with the Cassidy Hutchinson testimony as part of the trove of documents that you received?
As I sit here now, I don't recall, but it would.
Well, you're familiar with her testimony, aren't you?
I am, and
And in fact, wouldn't you agree with me that Ms. Hutchinson's testimony, especially the most explosive allegations made, was comprised of hearsay upon hearsay upon hearsay? Come on, you're an attorney. Mr. Smith, you can answer the question. Of course it was hearsay.
There was.
And hearsay isn't admissible in a court of law, is it? Why? Because it is inherently unreliable, and the victim or the target of a prosecution is not able to cross-examine. Isn't that correct? In fact, Mr. Smith, if you had attempted to walk into court with Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony, you would have been thrown out on your ear. No judge, no legitimate judge would have ever allowed the testimony of Cassidy Hutchins to be admitted in a court of law, would they?
I disagree.
Well, and then we've already talked about your record.
Mr. Chairman,
today,
Mr.
so I can
Chairman, the
understand
gentlelady's
why.
time has long
I
since
yield
expired.
back.
The time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman from Florida,
Hey, can I do one UC request first?
gentleman is recognized.
This is from factcheck.org. Meme rehashes old false claim that J6 committee destroyed evidence from October 15, 2024. And this is from the District of Columbia National Guard website, stating that this is the only National Guard unit in America which reports exclusively and only to the president.
Without objection, the gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, we're definitely not in a court of law today. Half this shit wouldn't come in if we were. I mean, good God. You know? I want to talk about something one of my colleagues, Mr. Nell, said from Texas. He sits on this new January 6th subcommittee, which I also happen to sit on. And he said the same thing in the subcommittee the other week, that it wasn't President Trump that inspired January 6th, right? It wasn't him. He said in the subcommittee that it was actually Ray Epps. Ray Epps. He was the one who told people to break the law and the windows and the doors and to beat police officers and hang Mike Pence and try to break into the floor of the House and wiping feces on the walls. It was all this guy, Ray Epps, right? So who is Ray Epps? Why is he so powerful? So, I mean, I just did a quick, Google search of Ray Epps, and his Wikipedia page says the powerful Ray Epps is a wedding planner to the Oath Keepers. This is the wedding planner? That's the mastermind of January. You went from Donald Trump. It wasn't Donald. Who are we going to blame? Who could it be? How about the wedding planner to the Oath Keepers? I mean, it's just pathetic. But, my colleagues love the past, Mr. Smith. Love the past. That's why you're here before Pam Bondi. Okay? We haven't had the Attorney General here. We didn't have her last year. She's the only one in the cabinet to not come in committee of reference, but they love the past. Oh, they, love talking about January 6th and Hunter Biden and COVID and Barack Obama and Hillary's emails. They love the past. These people love the past so much, they're still reenacting the Civil War, okay? Love the past.
Right now.
But they hate talking about the present. But you know what, let's talk about the past real quick. Here are some quotes, because I heard one of my colleagues call you a hypocrite. Here are some quotes from my colleagues. Chairman Jordan, right after January 6th, stop the violence, support Capitol Police. Ted Cruz, those storming the Capitol need to stop right now. The Constitution protects but not violence. Chip Roy, today the People's House was attacked, which is an attack on the Republic itself. Steve Scalise, United States Capitol Police saved my life. Lindsey Graham, when it comes to accountability, the president needs to understand his actions were the problem. Troy Nels, oh my God, him again. I'm happy to stand shoulder to shoulder with Capitol Police. Darrell Issa, the violence and turmoil we witnessed in Washington, D.C. was completely unacceptable. Rep. McClintock, the attack on Capitol strikes the most sacred act of our democracy. And former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, whose name we heard a lot today, what did he have to say about it? Let me be clear, last week's violence attack on the Capitol was undemocratic, un-American, and criminal. And make no mistake, those who were responsible should be brought to justice. The president bears responsibility, period, or exclamation point. But let's talk also about, the present. That's the past. Let's talk about the present. These are the guys who created the weaponization committee for the DOJ. So let's talk about the present. Jerome Powell facing investigation, okay? In fact, we heard about Jonathan Turley, that he's some legal messiah. Jonathan Turley calls the Jerome Powell thing legitimate concerns of retaliation. Lisa Cook, under investigation. Mark Kelly, United States Senator, under investigation. Adam Schiff, United States Senator, under investigation. Eric Swalwell, United States Representative, under investigation. Chris Christie, potentially under investigation. Jack Smith, oh, that's you, under investigation. Okay, Miles Taylor, former Chief of Staff, United States Department of Homeland Security, under investigation. Christopher Krebs, former Director of Cybersecurity, under investigation. Indicted. James Comey, Letitia James. John Bolton. It's weird that they indicted John Bolton but stole his foreign policy. Accused of crimes, former President Joe Biden, former President Barack Obama. Revoked or threatened with revocation of Secret Service protection, Kamala Harris, Hunter Biden, Ashley Biden, the daughter of President Joe Biden, Mayorkas, Mike Pompeo, Brian Hook, General Mark Milley, John Bolton, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the guy Trump gave a medal to. Security clearance revoked, Joe Biden, Anthony Blinken, Jacob Sullivan, Lisa Monaco, Mark Zaid, Norman Eisen, Letitia James, Alvin Bragg, Andrew Weissman, Hillary Clinton, Liz Cheney, Kamala Harris, Adam Kinzinger, Fiona Hill, Alexander Vindman, Miles Taylor. I can keep going. Any questions about any of that? We know you don't.
But will the gentleman yield for a question?
I will, please.
Because you have a way of synthesizing that nobody else does, Mr. Moskowitz. Listening to our colleagues today, I wonder if they actually believe any of this would have happened had Donald Trump simply accepted the results of the election.
You mean like Al Gore did when he lost 5-4 at the Supreme Court?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would any of this, would the violence have happened? Would the fake counterfeit slates have happened?
No,
the threats against Vice President Pence?
No, none of it would have happened. And Leanne Panetta would still have his security clearance. So would John Brennan. So would Michael Morrell, Michael Vickers. I can't get them all in, Mr. Chairman. I can't get them. I have like 4 more pages of the weaponization of the Department
Time
of
of the
Justice.
gentleman from Florida
Concern.
has expired. The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, when was the initial indictment issued on President Trump? August 1st, 2023, does that sound about right?
That's in the election case. That's correct.
Correct. And on that election case, after that, you asked for a trial date when?
I don't recall as I sit here right now.
January 2024, does that sound about right?
That sounds about right.
Okay, so after the indictment, you in August, you asked for a January trial date. That's like 5 months? 5 months? How much evidence did you have? Millions of pages?
As I sit here right now, I don't recall the exact.
I think in your
size.
testimony, they talked about a number, 13 million pages. Is that a ballpark accurate number?
I think that was the question asked of me, and as I sit here, I don't have an accurate number for
So let's just assume that that's true, right? Because you had a bunch of stuff. You had $50 million that you blew through the Treasury on a trial that went nowhere. How many pages per day is that? 100,000? Does that sound about right? What if we break that down per hour? It's 4,166. Per minute is 70 pages. You like to read, sir? You like to read?
I do.
Do you read 70 pages a minute?
I do not.
I mean, that would be remarkable. So how do you prepare for a trial in 5 months if you're asking the defense counsel to read 70 pages a minute? How do you do that and prepare a defense and look at all the witness testimony and video evidence that you supposedly had? How do you do that? You know what's shocking to me, and I think that one of the most egregious aspects of this case, Mr. Smith, is that if you get a traffic ticket in Washington, D.C., you're not going to trial in 5 months. But you want the president, the former president of the United States, to have a trial date with 13 million pages of documents within 5 months. I think that's ridiculous. And I think that speaks exactly to what we talk about when we examine not only your record, but the things in this case that are deeply troubling. That this was not the pursuit of facts and law and letting the judge and the jury decide, that this was an exercise in it was a political hit job, timed perfectly against the President of the United States. Sir, in the Florida case, in the records case, what happened ultimately in that case?
What happened ultimately in the case?
Yeah, the Mar-a-Lago records case.
I'm going to answer because I don't think this is covered by Judge Cannon's order. We moved to dismiss that case pursuant to Justice Department policy.
No, the records case in Florida.
Against Donald Trump.
The records case in Mar-a-Lago, were you ruled to be, what was the ruling in that?
That was Judge Cannon's ruling, and she ruled my appointment unlawful, and we sought to appeal that, and that appeal was pending at the time that we dismissed the cases.
So from the very beginning, Were you ever confirmed by the United States Senate?
I have never been confirmed by the United States Senate. I will say that the history supporting my appointment is over 100 years old. Other special counsels
But isn't there a
have been
statute on the
approved.
appointment? I mean, you have to be confirmed by the Senate. So I think that's kind of interesting. But I think the point is, from the very beginning, on the documents case and others, you weren't even lawfully appointed, and that's why Judge Cannon ruled the way that she did. And from the beginning, we talk about that you followed Department of Justice policy, you followed the facts, you followed the law, you followed the Constitution. That's what you have said all throughout this day, parroted by the Democrats, that you have done nothing wrong. But from the very beginning, you weren't even lawfully, and you can't even recall who swore you in. So as we sit here today, based on your testimony in the transcribed interview, can you tell us who swore you in as special prosecutor?
As I said, I know I took the oath of office. I don't recall who swore me in. What I can share with you.
I don't know, sir. Call me naive, but that's a milestone career move for you that you get to do this, and you don't remember the circumstances. I just find that a little bit odd. But here's the thing, and I'm going to wrap up quick. You're unconstitutionally appointed. You breached the 60-day rule, releasing this very partisan attack against the president right before the election. You tampered with evidence in the Mar-a-Lago case that you admitted to in court filings. You subpoenaed members of Congress and their phone records in violation of the Constitution, of current statutes. You didn't even let the court know that these were members of Congress. How are we to assume otherwise that this wasn't political? Because it absolutely was, sir. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
I would caution my friend from South Carolina and others against jumping into bed with Judge Cannon, who's been rebuked repeatedly by the 11th Circuit because she is completely lawless. But let's go back to the actual evidence rather than all the procedural stuff about when you were sworn in or not. I don't blame you for not remembering that. You've been probably sworn in a dozen times. It doesn't jump out at you. I want to go back to the evidence, though, that Donald Trump knew that he was lying about the election. And I'd ask you to say, if you could, specifically, who gave evidence to you that supported your conclusion that he knew that he was lying?
That came from a number of sources. It came from staff in the White House who talked to him and told him that his fraud claims were not true. It came from staff on his campaign who told him that. It came from members of the Department of Justice. It came from state officials who, when he tried to press them to do things in contravention of their oath, they refused to. They asked him for evidence and his co-conspirators, and they never provided it. Over and over again, the people who had who were best situated to know how the elections were conducted in these states, he either avoided contacting them or disregarded the clear debunkings that were provided to him, such as by the Georgia Secretary of State.
Right, and I mean, that's a lot of evidence, but we know that his attorney general at the time also concluded, quote, he knew well that he lost the election, Bill Barr, and yet he incited a riot on January 6th, and 4 of the brave officers who defended the Capitol and defended my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are here today. Not a single Republican member of this committee has recognized them or thanked them for their service, and I would like to do so today. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, my colleague from California referred to a couple statements from your former colleagues in Penn and the Eastern District about your impeccable reputation as an apolitical career politician. As an alum of the Southern District of New York myself, I can tell you that many of my former colleagues also feel the same, and that's saying something coming from the SDNY to the EDNY, as you know. Mr. Smith, did you ever speak to President Biden about this case?
Never.
Did you ever receive orders or direction from President Biden or anyone else in the White House about this case?
No.
Did you ever receive any direction from the Attorney General Merrick Garland regarding how you should, whether or not you should charge this case?
No, I was given the independence to make that decision on my own.
An independent special counsel, exactly. I just want to point out to my colleagues who seem to think this is a politicized investigation that on February 10th, over a month, 2021, over a month after January 6th, Marco Rubio said the January 6th attack on the Capitol was far more dangerous than most realize, and we have a criminal justice system in place to address it. Who oversaw the Department of Justice on February 10th, 2021? Who was president?
February 10th, 2021. That would be Joe Biden.
So Marco Rubio wanted Joe Biden's Department of Justice to investigate Donald Trump and his January 6th insurrectionist. I want to ask you in my last few seconds, Mr. Smith, you're not the first special counsel to investigate Donald Trump. Special Counsel Mueller, also of impeccable integrity, concluded that the 2016 Trump campaign welcomed foreign interference from Russia and used it to help them. Donald Trump has made it a litmus test to be hired in this administration to say that the 2020 election was fraudulent, even though, as you have established, it was not. And now there are senior officials in this government who are responsible for protecting our elections, who are election deniers. Can you describe in a few seconds what your concerns are about the upcoming election based on your investigation and what we know today?
I believe political litmus tests are not proper for career prosecutors. I think my experience over 30 years as a prosecutor in the Department of Justice is having people who are not guided by party allegiance, but guided by experience. That's how you can trust the criminal justice system. It's the same way with our election system.
Gentleman's time has
Thank
expired.
you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Yeah. First of all, just a couple of comments. There are probably 10 people on this committee who have more conversations with 10, 15 people on this committee who have more conversations with Donald Trump than myself. But anybody who says that Donald Trump thought he won that election, that is just plain not true. No way, unless he's the best actor in the history of this building.
We agree.
That Donald Trump believed.
Order.
Donald Trump did not believe he lost that election. He just didn't. No way. And I think on January 6th, I can't believe there were any congressmen here who didn't think Joe Biden was going to be sworn in as president. So it was a riot, but it wasn't a threat to the future of the republic. Okay. Now we should have posted up here a document for you to look at. Here we are. Okay. This is something we received with regard to Arctic frost. It's a list of about 70 names. I don't know whether or not you're familiar with the document.
I don't believe I'm familiar with this document.
Okay. The document contains just about every person who was higher up in the Donald Trump campaign. There's a little more emphasis on here on people involved in Wisconsin, but you're not familiar with the document.
I'm sorry, sir, what was your question?
Would you know what was in this document? These names, you familiar with them at all? They're under the impression that most of these people, maybe almost all of them, were subpoenaed by you at some time or other. That helps you.
Some of these names I am familiar with. Others I'm not familiar with, or I don't recall as I sit here now.
Okay. We'll eventually submit another question for you on this later on. From the time you were appointed as special counsel to your resignation in January 2025, did you ever have contact with the January 6th Select Committee?
I did not personally. When I became special counsel, I directed my deputy to ask the Select Committee to provide us whatever evidence they would provide us.
So you directed people to have direct contact?
I directed my deputy to make contact to collect evidence from them.
And that's J.P. Cooney?
J.P. Cooney, my deputy, correct.
Okay. Did you have any concern that the evidence collected by the Partisan Select Committee would be in any way tainted by politics?
I apologize, sir. I just couldn't hear
Okay.
you because of the door.
I'm sorry, we had people going through here. Did you have any concern that the evidence collected by the Partisan Select Committee would be in any way tainted by politics?
I intended to conduct an independent investigation, and my goal was to collect the evidence, assess it, and consider it with all the other evidence we would collect, and make an independent determination in my investigation separate from that investigation.
I'm going to go back and ask you something on that one before, because I think I know the answer. There's a person on that list by the name of Vicki McKenna who we believe did have her records subpoenaed. Are you familiar with that name at all?
As I sit here right now, I am not familiar with that name.
Okay, thank you. With regard to part of the documents that you received was with regard to Cassidy Hutchison, right?
We requested that they give us everything they were willing to give us. As I sit here now, I don't recall if specifically her information was in there, but I'm not denying that it was. It may well have been.
Okay, we'll go back. Your team issued subpoenas to various financial institutions, telecommunications providers, and conservative entities requesting communications between them and President Trump's campaign, right?
We did issue subpoenas for various sorts of information, correct?
Okay, and the bank records, you would say, or we could describe, were fairly broad, the request?
We issued subpoenas for certain bank records as part of our investigation, yes.
Okay. Shortly after you're appointed, you issued subpoenas to state and local officials for their communications with President Trump, is that correct? And his campaign.
As I sit here now, I'm trying to recall specifically which officials, but I know we issued a number of subpoenas in our investigation to understand the communications between President Trump and various entities, including state officials.
One final question.
One quick final question.
Yeah. Do you really believe that President Trump thinks he lost that election?
Yes. Our investigation following the facts and the law determined that...
No way, thank you, that's enough.
I have a unanimous
way.
consent
Gentleman
request.
from New York is recognized for unanimous consent.
Actually, I have two. One is to article entitled, "With AG Bondi next to him, Trump says deranged Jack Smith must be investigated." And the other is a tweet from Marco Rubio. "There is nothing patriotic about what is occurring on Capitol Hill. This is third world style anti-American anarchy."
Without objection. Gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
Can I get an extra 33 seconds?
You get your full 5 minutes.
Well, okay, fine. It's curious because you've sat here all day, and thank you so much for showing up because this was something that you wanted to do. The Republicans wanted to make sure that you were hid in a room with no cameras because I was there. They didn't really want you out public because they were afraid of what you would say, which is that you could have proven your case because you are a career prosecutor who knows how to prosecute criminals. So just to be clear, today it seems like the Republicans have not really fought very much about whether or not Trump was guilty or not. In fact, their fight seems to be over whether or not you were authorized to prove their guilt. Do you recall a number of Republican members asking about whether or not your appointment was okay, even though we know that you've testified about the more than 100-year precedent that allowed for your appointment?
I was asked questions about that today, and our position, as we filed in our appeal, is that there was strong support for my appointment, including Supreme Court precedent directly on point.
Thank you so much. Additionally, everybody's been all gingerly here today. But I don't know why we're acting surprised that a man who had close to 90 allegations out of 4 different jurisdictions and ultimately ended up with 34 convictions after a jury was able to hear all the evidence would possibly be committing a criminal act on January 6th. In fact, considering the fact that we are now under the impression that he is violating people's due process rights, he is ignoring court orders, he's starting wars without congressional authority in contradiction to the Constitution. He's enriching himself to the tune of over $1.4 billion. He's shaking down electeds to draw maps that will help him stay in power because the Republicans don't understand that they swore an oath to the Constitution and that we are supposed to do checks and balances. He's also shaking down TV stations to get money. So why are we trying to pretend as if it is out of the realm for this particular man to commit the crime that he committed on January 6th, and frankly, the only reason he ran for president was to make sure that he would not be prosecuted, because I fully believe that you would have put him under the jail based on our long-form conversation that we had. But according to your special counsel report on page 137, it states the department's view that the Constitution prohibits the continued indictment and prosecution of a president is categorical and does not turn on the gravity of the crimes charged, the strength of the government's proof, or the merits of the prosecution. And that, quote, but for Mr. Trump's election and imminent return to the presidency, the office assessed that the admissible evidence was sufficient to obtain and sustain a conviction at trial. In other words, Donald Trump ran for president, like I said, so he wouldn't have to spend the rest of his life in prison. The chairman and other members of this committee have spent all day attacking you and trying to rewrite the history of January 6th. But Mr. Jim Jordan, the chairman, failed to mention how he was running around the Capitol terrified by the possibility that all those insurrectionists would harm him. In fact, on page 97 of the deposition transcript, you mentioned how Mark Meadows, the president's chief of staff, quote unquote, never saw Jim Jordan so scared. The chairman also failed to mention that he was in direct contact with the White House in the days leading up to and on January 6th, which is why his toll records were subpoenaed by your office. Let me be clear, because they're trying to act like this is Democrats on Republicans, and I guess you are a covert Democrat that knew that he was going to try to steal an election before he tried to steal that election, and so therefore you were somehow put into place. I mean, the conspiracy theories make your head spin, but nevertheless, were you going to subpoena the toll records of every single Republican simply because they were a Republican?
No, we subpoenaed the toll records in the course of this investigation because they were relevant to our investigation.
Relevant. Oh, okay. All right, so that means something about facts. So let's talk about facts. Donald Trump lost to Joe Biden, yes or no?
That's correct.
Okay. In fact, 60 federal and state courts have found that there was no evidence of election fraud. Trump's own attorney general and vice president knew that he lost the election, but he still tried to steal the election by pressuring state officials, designing fake elector plans, nearly having Mike Pence hanged, and ultimately demanding that his supporters, quote, fight like hell, correct?
Correct.
We all saw it happen once they reached We all saw what happened once they reached the U.S. Capitol. As your report outlines, President Trump knew that he would incite violence at the Capitol that day. In fact, some of Trump's senior advisors were pushing for violence. For example, page 81 of the report details how co-conspirators number 2, John Eastman, tried to convince Mike Pence to break the law, stating that, quote, violence was necessary. So it isn't just Trump who is responsible for the death of multiple law enforcement officers and the injuries of thousands of people. A lot of Republican members of Congress are also responsible. 147 Republicans voted to overturn the 2020 election results, including multiple members currently serving on this committee, and I will yield.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, we've heard a lot of information that's gone across this day as we spin it here. We've heard disregard for the First Amendment at times. We've heard talk about solely seeking charges against Donald Trump, obviously targeting. We've talked about the amount of time and reasonable time frame. But I want to ask you for a moment, I can, about some troubling reports that a prosecutor from your office, Jay Bratt, implied to Stanley Woodward that the administration would look more favorably on a judgeship application if he managed to get his client, Walt Nauta, to cooperate against President Trump and to flip on him. And we know this because Stanley Woodward himself came forth with this information. And I guess my question for you, is this appropriate behavior for a special counsel's office to leverage attorneys' future career prospects?
Sir, I believe I can answer this question, even though it's regarding the Florida case, because we did filings on it, and I'm not referring to anything in the final report. And my answer to you, sir, is that when I was first notified about this issue, which was 9 months after it allegedly occurred, this is alleged to have occurred before I was even special counsel, what I did is I directed my deputies to look into it. We made sure the person involved self-referred it to OPR, and then we did a filing to the court. There was a motion by President Trump's attorneys. We responded and we laid out our position, and our position was that I did not believe that that allegation was credible. At best, it was a misunderstanding because the people in the room did not understand any threat to be made. Even Mr. Woodard, in his allegation, claimed it was only an inference. 9 months went by where we interacted with Mr. Woodard, in which we had no hearing of a complaint. When the complaint was raised for the first time, which was on the eve of that indictment being brought, it was raised in the guise of asking the court to delay the indictment while an investigation of it happened. So I take allegations of misconduct very seriously. I would not want any of my attorneys threatening anybody. Ultimately, when I looked at this, I did not credit it, and we responded with our position in court. But we also, it was clear that it was referred to the Office of Professional Responsibility, which is what good prosecutors do in that situation.
Well, again, to say that you didn't consider it to be credible, I guess we have the United States Associate Attorney General Stanley Woodward, who claims that this threat was made to him, and I don't see what he would stand to gain from not telling the truth there. And I understand that you tasked 2 of your attorneys with investigating those statements made by Brat, but given the amount of publicity and the scrutiny that was surrounding this entire investigation, why in the world did you not initiate an independent investigation into these very alarming allegations?
Well, 2 points there. You stated that you don't, why would he do this? When he made the allegation, when this allegation first came from President Trump's attorneys and then days later from Mr. Woodard, he did ask for the case, the indictment, to be put off in result of this. So there was a thing he was asking for in result. And with respect to an independent investigation, that's exactly why you refer this to the Office of Professional Responsibility. They conduct an independent investigation outside of my office.
Well, let me just say, for 4 years, we watched the Biden administration politicize and weaponize the Department of Justice. From going after pro-life activists to spying on faithful Catholics, the Biden administration showed disregard for impartiality. And this blatant disregard was perhaps no clearer than in the targeting of President Trump. We've talked about it all throughout this day. They knew they couldn't beat him at the ballot box, so they pursued alternative options. And I'm grateful for this committee's efforts today to investigate this conduct to ensure accountability. And while elections are not akin to jury trials, I feel strongly that the results of the 2024 election sent a clear message about how the American people feel about these politicized charges. And I think they absolutely made a difference in those 24 elections. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Missouri.
Mr. Chair, I actually have a UC.
Gentleman is recognized.
This is, let's see, I asked unanimous consent to enter into the record this DOJ press release titled "Houston Man Sentenced to Prison for Assaulting Law Enforcement with Dangerous Weapons During January 6th Capitol Breach."
Without objection.
My second one is I asked unanimous consent to enter into the record an article titled "They Ransacked the U.S. Capitol and Want the Government to Pay Them Back," published by the Washington Post, January 21st, 2026.
Without objection. Gentleman from Missouri is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, after indicting the leading Republican candidate for the President of the United States on August 1st, 2023, You asked for a trial date of January 2024, just 5 months later. During your deposition, you did not dispute that that would have given Trump's legal team just 5 months to review 13 million pages and thousands of hours of video evidence, working out to nearly 100,000 pages per day. Mr. Smith, you claim that you acted independently of the upcoming presidential election, and yet you pushed for a trial date ahead of the election. Why such a rush to charge and try and pursue conviction on President Trump?
I sought to move that case forward expeditiously because the public has a right to a speedy trial as well as a defendant. That is, there is Supreme Court precedent directly on point regarding that. I felt it was my duty to do that. I considered all options. I listened to
But isn't the right to a speedy trial primarily a right of the defendant? I honestly, before your arguments, I've never heard of the idea that the prosecution has a right to speed up a trial and require the defense to review 100,000 pages a day in order to get a trial in before an election. I've never heard of such a thing.
The Supreme Court, in at least, as I sit here now, 3 different cases, has stated pretty explicitly that the right to a speedy trial is the public's as well as the defendant's, and that
You were trying to get President tried, convicted, and hopefully in prison before Election Day. I understand, Mr. Smith. I think it's very telling that during your deposition you could not articulate any evidence that President Trump instructed individuals to unlawfully enter the Capitol on January 6, 2021. You claim that President Trump was, quote, responsible for the events at the Capitol on January 6, which was not charged in your indictment. How do you reconcile that with the position of the department in other GA6 related cases that President Trump wasn't responsible for the events at the Capitol that day?
I'm not aware of the department taking a position that Donald Trump was not responsible. I think my recollection is the position that the department took in other cases is other defendants weren't not responsible themselves because of Donald Trump, that blaming him wasn't going to be a valid defense in their case. That's my recollection.
So on January 6, 2021, President Trump tweeted, quote, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of the country. Stay peaceful, exclamation point. This seems to show clearly that Trump urged his supporters at the Capitol to remain peaceful. Is that not right?
It's incorrect. First off,
He didn't send that tweet?
He sent that tweet, but he sent that tweet only after being harangued by people to send something to stop the violence at the Capitol.
Okay, let's get the timeline straight then. At 1:55 p.m., there was a breach of the bike racks at the northeast perimeter. At 2:13, there were protesters breaching the Capitol, breaking into the Northwest Senate window and opening the doors. At 2:38, President Trump tweeted what I just quoted. That's 25 minutes between the Capitol building breach. Is 25 minutes, that's too slow? Would Trump have been guilty of insurrection if it were 15 minutes? Would it, 5 minutes? How quickly was he supposed to send that tweet to remain peaceful?
My recollection, as set forth in the indictment, is the timeline of when the attack of the Capitol happened, including the tweet that endangered Vice President Mike Pence's life, was different than what you stated.
So that tweet was after, of course, the riot had started. But President Trump also said, quote, we've come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully selected. I know that everyone will soon be marching to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voice heard. Peacefully and patriotically, is that an incitement of a riot?
That is not.
Okay, so in November 2016, Hillary Clinton disputed, for years called President Trump an illegitimate president. He knows he stole the election as recently as September 2019. Had there been a riot around the 2016 presidential election, would Hillary Clinton be guilty of inciting insurrection?
I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals. I will say that President Trump's conduct was without historical analog.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields
Mr.
back.
Chair?
May I
Young
have,
lady from Vermont.
Mr. Chair, I ask a unanimous consent to enter into the record the first superseding indictment for Capitol rioter and Oath Keeper Kelly Meggs, who brought weapons and armor with him to D.C. and wrote to a friend, Trump said it's going to be wild, it's going to be wild. He wants us to make it wild. That's what he said. Okay. He's calling us to the Capitol and wants to make it wild. Sir, yes, sir, gentlemen, we're heading to D.C. to pack our shit. And, Mr. Chair, I have a unanimous consent request. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this superseding indictment filed the Department of Justice on August 27th, 2024, that outlines how Donald Trump, among other felonies, conspired to defraud the United States in his effort to fraudulently and violently overturn the results of the 2020 election that he lost.
Without objection, the gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, 5 hours later, here we are. One of the benefits of being a freshman member of this committee with the least amount of seniority is you get the benefit of getting everybody else listen to them talk first. I want to start by saying that starting out, I was not real familiar with this issue. In fact, when the chairman of the committee told me we had Jack Smith coming in, my first response privately was, who's Jack Smith? And I say that because my wife and I have 5 young children. We don't have cable television, and by the time we get them to bed, we're either watching Netflix or better yet, reading books. So when I came to this, I wanted to take a real honest look at what had happened. And I should also say that, a little about what I think happened on January 6th. I think, like most Americans, think Donald Trump was cruising to re-election in 2019 with the booming economy, and then COVID happened, George Floyd happened, a lot of things got changed. But I do think in those circumstances that Joe Biden won that election. I also think, like most Americans, that January 6th was a terrible attack. I think it was a terrible riot. I don't believe it was an insurrection determined to overthrow the government, but I think it was an important day for America. I also think, like most Americans, it was extremely unfortunate for this country that the January 6th committee was a partisan event, and there was not an ability to put folks from both sides of their choosing on that committee so there could have been a full and honest debate for the American people. I think it was politically motivated, what Nancy Pelosi did with that committee. And so when I came to this issue with a fresh look, with those kind of my priors and what I got into, what I wanted to find was that in the goodness of the rule of law, that you as an investigator carried this out to the highest ideals, and it was not a politically motivated investigation. And I think a lot about that in the 250th anniversary of America. And I think about what the framers would have thought of this and the state of the rule of law, what makes America special, what checks and balances, what keeps us from being a banana republic. But what I was disappointed to find when I looked into this issue and how you conducted the investigation was that it was a politically motivated investigation determined to influence the election in 2024. And I say that, and the thing I cannot get around as I look into this is the timing that you fought for in when the court cases would be held. Now, to my understanding, the Department of Justice says you're not supposed to have politically motivated timing of a court case. But when I look at the timing that you pushed for and the jurisdictions between New York and Florida, and with all the other things that President Trump was engaged in, that looks very politically motivated to me, and I think to the American people as they take a look at this issue to try to influence the election. So that's where I come down after today's hearing, my own independent investigation, and your commentary. I sincerely hope that conclusion is incorrect, but that's the conclusion I come to. And I think when most people, if they look through this not through a partisan lens, I think they'll come to, they will not be able to get around the fact of how you timed these elections. I think that's really to the detriment of the American Republic and for where we sit today as a country. And so my one question for you, Jack Smith, is are you familiar with the Vietnamese city of Bến Tre?
I am not.
Well, Bến Tre was the site of an intense firefight in early 1968. And after that intense firefight that destroyed the town, a reporter from the Associated Press interviewed a U.S. major, and he said it became necessary to destroy the village in order to save it. Now, historians do not know what was the name of that U.S. major, but I think when they look back at your engagement with our democracy in this republic, they will remember your name. And when it comes to the rule of law that is the foundation of this country, they will remember someone who helped destroy the rule of law. And with that, Mr. President,
Gentleman yield
Mr.
for a
Chairman,
question.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Ranking members recognized for.
Oh, I was wondering whether you would yield for a question.
I will defer on. I'll just yield to the chairman.
Gentleman yields back. I think the gentleman.
Yeah, then I've just got one UC request, Mr.
Go to
Chair.
you, then I think the gentleman from Wisconsin has a request.
Okay, this is from Politico, October 20th, 2023. Kenneth Chesbrough, an architect of Trump's fake elector scheme, pleads guilty to the offense in Georgia.
Without objection. Gentleman from Wisconsin recognized.
I just have to clarify something I said.
Yep.
I've talked to Donald Trump over a period of time. Donald Trump is 100% certain he won that election. There is 0% chance that he believes he lost. And I say that based on private conversations, which just, boom. So I want to clarify that.
Noted for the record, we appreciate that. This concludes today's hearing. We thank.
Mr. Chairman, for me, I just have one final question for you. That it begins really just as a point of order.
Okay.
As you know,
Point of order, or is it a point of order or a question?
it's a point of order leading to a question, if that's all
Wow,
right.
that's innovative.
Okay, so it's
I don't think that's an order, but because I'm such a nice guy,
Well, I
I'm going
appreciate
to let
that.
you state
It's
whatever you're
straightforward and it's
stating.
in good faith.
Okay,
Look,
in good faith.
Because of nothing you've done and nothing that I've done, Jack Smith has not been able to answer the vast majority of questions about what's in volume 2 of his special counsel report relating to the stolen documents. Now, it's been said that the judicial order that Eileen Cannon imposed will be lifted in February. And so I guess my point of order is, do we intend to bring him back so he can answer questions about volume 2 and about the stolen documents case?
We'll take it under advisement.
Okay, well then,
We're going to
just,
see what the court decides to do, frankly.
I got you. Well, then in that event, I've got the signatures of every member on our side who are writing to notify you of our intent to call him to testify in continuation of this hearing to answer all of the unanswered questions about the second half of his
That will
work.
certainly factor in tremendously when we make our decision.
Okay, because we have a right on the minority day to have a witness, and we will exercise that right.
You're going to call him back again?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
So, and
We'll see.
yeah, okay. I'm citing Rule 11, Clause 2J.
We look forward to seeing the letter, and we'll find out.
Thank you.
We'll take it all under advisement, as we said. That concludes today's hearing. We thank the witness for appearing before the committee today. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days to submit additional written questions for the witness or additional materials for the record. Without objection, the hearing is adjourned.
Awesome. Here's.
Okay.